Hey everyone, so I'm gonna go for another short one right now, following up from the last video where we were doing the app middleware. I'm just gonna highlight over here everything I added, which is the request method, the path, the duration, uh, the response status code, the client IP and port if available, and user agent. Um, which is a common header that's passed that just says what is accessing this. So it could be like a browser or a bot or a mobile app or whatever. So it's a neat little thing to have. And I think if it's stir or none, so it'll just return none if it's not there. So we're Gucci here. Also, you guys might have noticed that I'm doing this in camel case. Maybe I already mentioned this, but it's JSON. Others might interpret JSON, so I'm just gonna keep it camel casey to keep it JavaScript compliant, whatever that means. So that's the middleware. Pretty much ended pretty quickly. I also added the type call. I don't know, maybe I did this in the previous thing. I annotated the return type to be of response, which it is. And it gets a response from call next, right? Essentially, and then does something with that response object and then sends it off. So it does return a response type. And the call next is a callable. I believe these are accurate type annotations, but can't be 1,000% certain. And then, so basically I was trying to add, remember how earlier I had logger.warning application started? So I wanted to have something separate, and apparently in FastAPI there's something called at app.onEvent. Why is this not? Maybe app.onEvent, right? But then the strike through came and I saw that it was deprecated. And then there's these, I can just go to the lifespan event stocks, and that showcased that the way this is done now in FastAPI is essentially by something called an async context manager. So you can import this from context lib. And remember how we discussed about context managers, things with a begin and an end? Essentially, with async context manager, you can turn one function into a context manager, and you can pass this function lifespan to the initialization and set that to do whatever you need at startup and shutdown, right? So right now it's just logger info, but this is really neat because if I want to load like a database, something, or clean up a database connection, I can do that with this, right? And I just pass this function lifespan into this, and boom, we're done. So now we'll get, if you see the logs, I'm just gonna run this really quickly. I'm gonna move my own face out of the way. You can see application started from logger name app, right? I'm just gonna use the root logger for that instead of the access logger, and keep the access logger for specifically for HTTP methods or requests. And it's kind of annoying because along with mine, I'm seeing these application startup completes. So I think probably the next thing I'm going to do is set up a logging filter just for these two messages, the application startup complete and the application shutdown. Everything else, the waiting for shutdown, this end of process, finished process, blah, blah, blah. I'm gonna let UVcorn take that because I feel like that's stuff that UVcorn can do just fine, and I don't have granular control over those processes. So it's nice to have those logs still because they only happen like on startup and at end. So there's no point in not having those logs. But my OCD brain is getting very irritated with the separate and specific application started twice. So like application started here, application startup complete, right? It's just super annoying. So I'm just gonna just set up filters that avoid these things, and who knows, they might come in handy later, and it's neat to figure out how to use filters. So I'm gonna do that next probably. Bye.